Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining another AmTrust Title webinar series on how to attract more business in any market during the COVID-19 and beyond. My name is Farhan, and I am a New York State agency representative. With us today, we have Dean Kulura, CEO and founder of TitleTap. Just so you know, there is a chat box on the side for any questions that you might have. Also, if you have any questions, you can feel free to email either Dean or I, and we would be more than happy to help you out. With that being said, Dean, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Farhan. Thanks for having me. Really excited to uh, be on this presentation today and appreciate everybody carving out a few minutes to hear what we have to say. I am going to go a bit fast and furious with the topics here. And as Farhan said, feel free to use your chat on the sidebar there and field questions as we go. This is going to be kind of half on slides a little bit. We'll talk in reference and then half conversation and kind of fireside chat style. So hopefully you get one thing out of this. As Farhan said, I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called TitleTap. We specialize in working with title agents and attorneys throughout the country around websites and marketing for their firms. Myself, I was an agent for about 10 years in the Florida market, was a licensed realtor, and just really have a passion on helping customers experience success with a really professional online presence. That said, we're going to just dive right into the meat. So the first tip that I want to talk about is really breaking down how you can leverage the information that you actually already have or can easily attain. And so what I mean by that is that most firms have a transaction management suite, right? A closing production suite, where you configure documentation when you get a new order. And in that, there's a lot of reporting capabilities. So most customers that we talk to tend to use that more for things like escrow reconciliation, but they can be a great bed for things like marketing data. So what you want to try to uncover there is take a look at maybe your last 20 deals. If you have an export capability, either in like a CSV file or Excel format is typically what we see. You're going to want to try to find things like obviously buyer and seller information, realtor information, lender information, and really break down what kind of story does that data tell you, right? Are you getting a lot of your new deal flow from a particular source, or is it kind of equally mixed across multiple sources? What kind of transactions are you typically seeing? Is it more retail? Is it more investor? Do you find yourself dealing in a certain part of town versus the other? All this can really be uncovered with those data sets. Once you have that, really getting feedback from customers is important. Why did they choose you? Why are they working with you? And then using that feedback, spread it to the team, let them know, and also let them be aware that they should be asking these questions when they get new orders from folks. And this can be kind of set up on a weekly or monthly basis. What you're trying to create is why you're getting the business that you're getting. And then furthermore, with that, what do those numbers tell you? All the while, you're looking to really kind of figure out, hey, is the business that I'm getting the right kind of business, right? Sometimes it's not. It's not the most profitable business, or you might find that you're heavily swayed, maybe 60%, 70% is coming from only two sources. That could be problematic if that source dries up, then you're having to start from scratch. So the first thing to do is really see what you have been already doing historically. And again, I would advise inventory your data resources. Ask if you don't know inherently if you have the capability inside that transaction management software or closing production suite. Ask your rep, have them point you through that process, get that export out, and filter by those data sets. So once you have that groundwork, you can start to build where you need to go from there. So any questions about that, Farhan?
Nope, we're all good here.
All right, good deal. The next thing I want to do is really kind of then focus you on how to leverage your website like a bullhorn. And so I think it can be, easily. And I apologize for the outside noise here. I'm still working from home, so navigating noise ordinances here. Um, so traffic was better than kids. So at any rate, using your website like a bullhorn, you want to really identify what things are most important, right? So as we break that down, customers are already thinking this way, right? Especially with COVID, they're asking, things like, are you even open? Will my home purchase still close on time? How will I sign my papers? Is it safe to even come inside of the office? I know a lot of firms have opened up options for people. So things like remote online notary or some kind of hybrid closing has been, gaining popularity. So you just want to have all these things listed online. Not everybody follows social media. A lot of people go to your website. If they have internet access, they're Googling, they're going to your website. So it's imperative that you have this information there. Here are some examples that I wanted to share. So you can have kind of a banner profile. If you look up there to your top left, more of a button style, just to the right there. As we go to the bottom row, having maybe a separate tab or a full page pop-up are also possibilities. Whatever you're comfortable with, you just want to make it very, very clear that, hey, you have a COVID response plan, and you're going to want to keep that plan current, right? Because as we have all seen, things have changed sometimes on a daily, weekly basis, and that's not always obvious for the customer. So if you have it in a centralized place that is very clear to see, that's going to help that process. So it's going to cut down on maybe some phone calls as well, because all the data will be there for them to retrieve. Speaking of a focused call to action, I want to kind of call out a couple of ideas for ways to do that. So on a lot of website pages, we see a bunch of content, right? It's all kind of similar font size, similar color. If you really want to draw the eye, you want to isolate what you want that customer to do as a next step, right? By changing color and shape. So having buttons that are, highlighted a different color in bold with a next step in the process of what they're supposed to do on that website page is absolutely critical so that they can keep that experience fluid. So whether it's like a click me, a submit, if you're talking about maybe an order or contact form, things like your phone number, and search. So again, what is it that you want that customer to do page by page by page, okay? And here's a visual example of that. So you can see here in this example on the top right, it's very clear, even though they have multiple tabs up there, the main tab that your eye just gets drawn to is the order title button, right? So it's very clear if that's what you're trying to do, that's where you go, you click the button, takes you to the form. If you're trying to contact them, they have a nice little contact form there. If you want to learn more about the company, they have a learn more button there as well. So again, very clear next steps on what I'm supposed to do as a user. So to round out tip number 2, really use your website like a bullhorn, right? Include things like notifications. So if you, again, we talked about the COVID-19 response plan as an example. FAQs are a really great way to kind of expand common questions you might be getting by phone. Have them kind of more clearly indicated on your website, right? Maybe publish them piece by piece on things like a blog or a social media post that drives back to your website. And make sure you have specific calls to action per page. What am I supposed to do when I get to this page? What's my next step, right? Make it obvious for your customer. So that kind of rounds up tip number 2. So far, we've been able to kind of extract the data that our closing suite provides to kind of know who our customers are, what they are in demographic, what they are in transaction type, and then we want to start packaging content on our site accordingly with using our website like a bullhorn. Farhan, any questions around this?
Yeah, so I mean, me personally, the COVID-19 response plan, I really like the yellow banner because it pops, it's like a highlighter color versus something like a pop-up because when I'm on a retail site maybe, I think someone wants to give me like 10% off and get me on the email list. So I normally escape and press X or whatever without even reading it, right? But
Yeah.
which of these examples would you say is most effective in terms of spreading your message?
It's really going to be personal preference. I think it's really important to understand who it is that your audience represents, right? So these were all, kind of specific to the customer. So if you're more comfortable with more of a banner style, go that route. If you want to make sure it's not going to be missed at all, maybe the full page pop-up is the route you go. If you're looking for more subtle but yet still called out, maybe the buttons or a separate tab is the route you go. So it really just comes down to what you feel comfortable with. I'd say out of popularity, most go with the banner that
Right.
you're describing. That's what we find most customers are comfortable with. But we just wanted to present some options here so that you can kind of see it can be done differently. It just depends on what you like.
Okay. And in addition to special notifications on your website, how could an agent reach out to everyone, their entire, client base, vendors, everyone at the same time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that kind of slides us into the next section, which let me go there, which is how to use online tools and information effectively. So one of the things we're going to talk about is that and how to leverage like a newsletter type of tool. So I'm going to slide into that if that's okay.
Sure.
So I've got a slide here with a myriad of different logos, some of which many of you can connect with or know already. You know, things like GoToWebinar, which is what we're using for this particular presentation, GoToMeeting, obviously Zoom, that's been, you know, just exploded in popularity with everything that's going on with COVID. But some of the more unknowns I want to touch on as well, and I'm going to show you guys some visuals as well as we move along. Webinar Ninja is another GoToWebinar type tool, but what's cool about that is that you can record webinars and actually have a chat, like a live chat with those, which is kind of neat for engagement. A tool like Calendly, which is there at the top, is an auto scheduler. So if you wanted to, for example, have on your website a place for realtors or your customer, really kind of good for like sales meetings. So like if you wanted a quick 30-minute or an hour virtual lunch or dinner, you could put that on your website to have people automatically know what your availability is. So it cuts back the back and forth on email. They could just schedule the appointment with maybe something like your Zoom, you know, link right there on it. Things like Eventbrite for scheduling events, YouTube for video, obviously. Constant Contact and MailChimp are really good for mass email. So far on the question you just had, you would want to leverage something like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp, but
Right.
have a website form where the customer would actually opt in for that information from that form on your website. So this is exactly what I'm talking about here. This is the visual example. So you'll see here, there's a button there on the tabs that says newsletter, and there's a form there. So to your point, if you're trying to push out information to all your customers, you're going to want to make sure that they've okayed that type of correspondence. So spam laws have gotten really, really strict, and you don't want to get blacklisted. You don't want your email address to be blacklisted from the email exchanges, because then you're not going to be able to receive or send email. So it's a good practice for them to opt in for that information. And if they want to ever unsubscribe, tools like Constant Contact and MailChimp help them do that from a self-service perspective. So that cuts down the work that you have to do. But the customer can literally just opt in, and if they want to sign up for updates and things you have coming up with events, etc., they would do that. You would have a little bit of a describer there at the top of the header, and then they would just submit their information and off you go. If you're wanting to do that more ad hoc manually for them, just ask them if they want that information, and then you can sign them up. But you want to make sure you have something in writing saying yes, they opted in for that information, just in case the email exchanges ever call you out for spam. You can say, look, I've got this list of approvals that they've opted in for that info. So does that help answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Awesome. So here's another example of what we were talking about with the video conference opportunities and schedulers. So one thing that's been really trending, and if anyone has ever received an invite for a Zoom conference, right, or a GoToWebinar conference, it's like War and Peace. Like you've got like 3 or 4 different phone numbers and links. It's very confusing for someone who's looking at that for the first time. So what a lot of customers have kind of tended to do is create an actual Zoom page on their website where you have a button and you literally are on the phone and you can direct the customer, hey, just click this button to join the meeting, and you give them the password that's tied to that specific session over the phone or maybe even via email. So it just cuts down the clutter and allows them to go right then and there to the meeting. So that's been a huge efficiency tool for a lot of our customers. The other component there to your right is the Calendly tool, and that's the auto scheduler tool. So that tool is actually free. They do limit the time block. So the free version, I think, only gives you, either a 15-minute block or a 60-minute block, or doesn't give you options. The paid version gives you options, but you can see there where you can schedule a meeting, click the button, and that's already going to be tied to your calendar. So they're only seeing the open blocks of time, and they can book the time and off you go. You get notified for that. Again, I would not suggest that for closings, but it's really good for things like one-on-one sales calls or virtual lunches, things like that for engagement. So again, another way to kind of add mileage to your online presence through your website. The one component that we get asked a lot is, Dean, during this time, like, how do I really keep engaging with my customers? How do I stay top of mind and give them things that they're interested in? So one of the ways you can use a Zoom and a GoToWebinar, in addition to just your customary operational flow, is through engagement and a little bit of kind of indirect marketing through town hall style meetings. So one concern I get all the time is, Dean, I don't know what kind of content to talk about on these meetings. So what do I, what are they interested in learning? So I've got two suggestions. One, simply ask. So I would ask 5 to 6 of your customers, hey, what is it that you want to learn more about? What could I help you with if I brought it to the table in this town hall format? The second is to interview some of your experts in that ecosystem that you're in for making deals happen. So, for example, if you wanted to interview a home inspector or an appraiser around the topic of how they're keeping deals alive during this time, right? How have they shifted their methodologies to make sure that the transaction can actually close? What should a realtor or broker or lender or consumer expect in the new process, right? And then that education is really helpful for someone that is talking to a prospective buyer, prospective seller, and kind of knows how it's going to work, so there's no surprises. So that has tended to lean favorably as a topic, and it totally relieves the heavy lifting from you coming up with all the content yourself. Simply co-hosting a town hall with a local expert is a big recommendation I would give to everybody. But you would use tools like a Zoom or GoToWebinar to host that and actually have that marketed. Once you've kind of got this postured, leveraging an events calendar. So we talked about Eventbrite being a third-party tool you could use for events, and some of you may be familiar with that already. Your websites, so like a lot of our customers, we offer a calendar plugin for the websites that we design. Your provider might have that, so ask. And if they do, you'll have the ability to have kind of a dynamic calendar on your website, so that any event has its own landing page, and that's kind of what you see here in front of you. So if you're doing the things like the town hall on a monthly basis, or you're doing something with a charity event or any kind of workshop, you can present that on your calendar, and then that is an easy place for people to go to see what you've got coming up. It's also nice to have as a marketing piece. So if you're going to be posting something on social, or maybe it's a blog post and you point people right to that event, it's just another way to circulate some marketing for things you've got going on. So I'd highly recommend an event calendar for your marketing. So to kind of round out the tips here for tip number 3 on integrating online tools, to Farhan's point earlier, we talked about a good way to possibly blast a lot of information out to all your customers is through some kind of an opt-in newsletter on your website. Again, the key ingredient there is you want to make sure that you are approved to send them that kind of content. So they either have to opt in on their own or get that approval in writing somewhere so that you can sign them up and it be okay. The second thing we talked about was adding a video conference button or a scheduler, so that, again, it's a lot easier to point people to a Zoom call by just simply pointing a place on your website, clicking the button, giving them that password over the phone or through email. It cuts down a lot of the noise from that long invite. The scheduler is really cool because, again, you can use that. It's already synced up with your calendar. It mitigates the whole back and forth with finding a date and time. I would use that for sales calls or virtual lunches. I would not use that for closings. We talked about re-engagement with your customer base through like a town hall style, activity, and you not having to come up with your content yourself. You could ask for one of the local experts to co-host with you, or simply ask your customers what they're interested in, and let that be the basis of finding that content, for that. Then lastly, once you kind of have that momentum going, putting these events on a calendar that's easy to access from your website and easy to market on social is highly recommended. You could do that through a third party like Eventbrite, or if your website provider has a plugin for the calendar feature for the site, that's highly recommended as well. Farhan, any questions around that?
No, but actually, I do have a comment. The
Okay.
video conference button, I like the idea of putting that on your website because it forces clients to go into your website and utilize, everything that you've built, uh, right? And it gets you more feedback and more views at the end of the day. And
It
then
sure does.
something
Yeah.
and then something like the calendar is also really good because if you utilize both and if you're hosting a lot of CEs, all of your clients can see when they are and go into your website to join them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we find a lot of customers do is it's right there, right? So they can kind of see what you have up and coming for the month. And it also makes it easy to point people back to your website if the calendar's on your website to give that website more brand recognition as well
Yeah,
and brand awareness. Because like you said, they'll go there for that. And then they might, poke around a little bit to see what other information you have available on your site. So the more
absolutely.
engagement that you have, it just builds that trust, it builds your brand.
Hmm.
Awesome. All right. So I think we're doing all right on time so far. This is our last tip. So I'm going to kind of go through this really quickly. So this is all about the importance of localizing your brand, right? And it's really really key. We get asked all the time, Dean, how do I get my rankings up on Google? And really, there's no silver bullet for that. But one thing that we've found that is absolutely imperative is your content. And you may have heard that a lot. Content is king and things of that nature. It's true, it is, and Google thinks so as well. So the ingredients with content is that you want to make sure that it's local and that it's unique. So whatever that customer, whatever that prospect is searching for, it's usually in question format. You want to make sure that you have keywords that not only match the question being asked, but that it's local to where they are. Google's going to reward content that specifically addresses the question based on where that particular prospect is located. All right. So the fact is that everyone probably listening in sells the same product, right? We sell insurance, title insurance. It's that peace of mind. It's really how you package how the consumer is looking for information around the transaction process that will help you be the authority of that information based on where you are. So we use this, all the time because we're in services. It's not like, we're selling shoes. It's not a product-based sale where, it's a quick, connect the dots and they buy it, right? Usually selling is something that is the byproduct of that customer finding the information they were originally looking for. And that's really true for title, services because they start with asking questions. In that process, especially if they're net new, they're going to need to build some trust before they reach out and then develop that relationship and then have confidence to commit the next step for giving you the order. So it's really important you have information they're looking for. Some examples of this could be, again, what is title insurance? What do I bring to closing? How is your service different? Some of the things we talked about earlier with, getting deals done during these times, that's asked quite a bit as well. So that is all good information to have up there. We talked about this earlier. This is another way to use the data from tip number one, right? What's in it for the customer, right? The whole what's in it for me. You want to break this down by not only customer type, but transaction type, right? And what I'm talking about is how you frame your content. So in this example, the customer might be millennials. The transaction type might be FSBOs. You might have a millennial who's also a FSBO. So millennials we know like to be part of a team. They like to kind of be part of that closing process. Obviously, if they're a FSBO, they're interested in selling their property by themselves. So how you package the resources that you are available and the value proposition for a FSBO related to the millennial, they need to be part of the process, right? So just keep that in mind. It'd be no different for, let's say, if the transaction type was more investor driven or luxury driven or retail. Based on, again, the demographic, you're going to want to package the content so that the value can speak to them. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So this is a customer who broke down and found out through her data, she's got three main pillars, right? She does a lot of for sale by owner. She does a lot of foreign investor services. She does a lot of witness courtesy closings as well. So she dug deep in understanding what type of content mattered to each pillar, and she wrote that content specific to their needs, right? So it goes well beyond, yes, I help realtors, I help lenders, buyers, and sellers. There are groups that are specifically focused on, again, a specific transaction type. So make sure you have content that speaks to that. And this is why, like, the keywords count, right? So in that last example, that customer has content on our site the way people are asking it. So determining your housing needs in Fort Myers, Florida. Just below that is a Google search result at the top of the search results, and you can see there right in bold, she's got the words determining your housing needs, and it's kind of called that out in bold. It's matching how the user is asking the question on Google. So that's what's going to help you rank higher and higher on search results. Again, a lot of it depends on the competitiveness of the market, how dense the market is, on how long it will take for you to kind of climb the ranks. But the key is going to be consistency and making sure you've got that good content. So a good place to start with this is
Uh,
leveraging that. Go ahead.
yeah, quick question.
Yeah.
So the keywords and things of that nature, does this allow a title company, uh, like the title companies watching today, to create landing pages for their attorney clients?
So, well, what it would do, Farhan, is you could have like, so in your FAQs, so that's a good question. So this is kind of where we're going to take it next. So an example of a good place to kind of start with keywords would be frequently asked questions, right? So as you get questions coming in weekly by phone or by email, or you have a subset of this already, you can leverage those FAQs as, for example, an individual blog post. And each blog post, in essence, would have its own landing page, right? So blogs are a great way to kind of express news feeds, and Google recognizes that. So keeping that active with good organic content is a great way to kind of again up the ranks. And each blog post, in essence, could be styled as an individual landing page.
Thank you.
You bet. So as a quick bonus here, I know we're winding down in time. I would strongly recommend you to Google your own business and see what you get. You'd be surprised if you haven't done this already. Another way to kind of help localize is through registering on these directory sites. So if you're not registered on Google or sites like Facebook or Yelp, highly recommend it. Super quick and easy to do. I'll actually share with Farhan a list of 15 directory sites to consider. It's usually free. You do get some solicitation afterwards, because they all try to sell you something. You don't have to buy anything, but you're going to get sent a postcard in the mail. Don't throw that out. Don't have the receptionist throw that out. It's going to have a code on the back of it that you need to finalize the registration. But once you do, this really does help boost your search results. Okay. In addition to kind of figuring out what kind of reviews you might be getting on these sites, for those that aren't registered, you could still be getting reviews and not even know it. So it's really important that you register. We usually recommend 3 to 5. Oftentimes, these directory sites rank even higher than your website itself, and that's the example here. So you can see here that Google My Business, Facebook, Yelp, MapQuest, they all ranked higher than the actual website of the customer. Okay, I apologize for that noise, guys. Luck would have it, right, Farhan? so, so in addition to this, please, register for at least 3 to 5. Okay, I'll have a list of Farhan at the end. So to round this section out, make your content local and unique. Focus on those keywords. An easy place to start would be with your FAQs. Register for 3 to 5 of those directory sites. You're going to get a ton of SEO benefit to help you rank higher in Google. And do yourself a favor and actually Google your own business to see what you find. All right. So, kind of closing us out, an easy 4-step process to get you going here. Contact your rep for your closing suite. Figure out how to export a file so that you can see the data that comes out of that. To isolate, who's been transacting with you. What does the story tell? What did the last 8 out of the 10 transactions tell you? Right. Then start leveraging your website like a bullhorn, making sure that you're integrating also tools like we talked about for things like the Calendly feature or Zoom, and then ultimately localizing the content to speak to what kind of business you're trying to attract, in addition to serving a better value set for the business that you already get through what the data is telling you. Farhan, any other questions up to this point?
Yeah, so I like the idea of blog posts because it gives you the opportunity to put more keywords on your webpage. But a lot of agents don't actually have the time to manage that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Are there any services available that can help an agent out with that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's something that we do. So we do have our video libraries. We have a legal stack and a title stack. They both come not only with video content, but they come blog ready. So we actually publish out of the box about 100 blogs, which just helps to bolt SEO for the sites. And then as you want to change those up or customize them, our support team can help you do that.
Cool. Thank you.
You bet. This is another tool set that I'll leave with you, Farhan, afterwards, and you can send out. So this is just a breakdown of the tools we talked about today, some ideas on what they're used for, and as well as an engagement idea. So this hopefully will be a helpful look back reference after we wrap up. And of course, this is the directory sites list that will also be sent to the attendees here as well. One last thing before we close out. If you are finding that your time is going to be better spent doing something else and you are looking for like an easy button, we do have a partnership with AmTrust and we have a special with them just to get this done. If you want to learn more about that, feel free to contact myself or Farhan afterwards, and we can kind of walk through what that is and how, what you're looking to accomplish. This is Farhan's information here. Many of you probably already know him and know how to reach him. Feel free to do that. And then if you have any additional questions, you can contact myself at dean@titletap.com. I really hope this was helpful for everybody and this was a productive use of your time. Any other questions that you have, Farhan, coming through?
Not at the moment, but if anyone does have any questions, you can always feel free to email us and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Well, I think that just about closes us out. We're about a minute over, so I appreciate everyone's time. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining.
Dean, yeah, thank you for taking the time to present, and thank you to everyone for watching. I hope everyone else has a nice day.
It was a pleasure being on. Thanks, Farhan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, bye.